The work begins with a phrase of the protagonist, that he has been a cultivator for over 600 years. Then, the main character said that he was nearing the end, and he almost succeeded in entering the immortal realm. At that moment, it seemed to him that immortality was already in his hands. He only had to take one step towards him, but he did not do it. He did not have time, because it turned out that he had already died. The main character is afraid, he does not want to die. Then, the main character said that, fortunately for him, God revived him, thereby giving him another chance. The catch was that he kept all his memories and treasure, and therefore knew everything that happened to him will happen. The main character said that he remembers everyone who in the past life bullied him, everyone who despised him and hated him. It turned out that life literally opened new gates for him, and he swore that he would kill them all with his own hands. He came to some field, where he was asked what his name was. Visiting young gentleman. The protagonist collected his thoughts, and then spoke. That from now on he will have a new name, and this life will be different from the previous one. Then he said that his name is Yeitian. The protagonist lay quietly on his bed, while for a moment, he was not awakened by a breath of wind. He opened his eyes. And then he realized it was him. He sat on the bed, looking at his hands. He finally realized that it is. He reached for his phone, and said that after all he did not. He was wrong. He managed to be reborn and now he is here on Earth. Then the protagonist repeated that for 600 years, he continued to be a cultivator. Then he explained that earlier, he stole a certain heavenly divine stone from the treasury of the strongest clan. 10,000th heaven. He had only to approach immortality, as he was mortally wounded. He looked at the stone in his hand, and then thought that his new body was weakened, and Dantian was almost withered. But he remembers that he made a lot of mistakes in his past life. Then he closed his eyes, and began to methodically scroll through your head all your past life. Then he said that at last he returned and now, Tian will never miss the repetition of past tragedies, and everyone who is responsible for them will pay him with his blood. Then a noise coming from the street caught his attention. He went to the window, and saw a company walking. They're very rich people. Some guy addresses a girl named Zihan. Says he wants to invite to a closed secular party. To this, the girl replied that her last boyfriend, Ye Tian, never knew how to treat ladies. The guy looks at all this from the window, and remembers this girl. Moments in a past life flash through his head, and he says he regrets the amount of time spent on this hopeless love, and then he added that the girl is not even worthy of his grief, now. Then, the guy who was next to the girl asked what he opinion, her fiancé is very much in love with her, so it seems that he will be against it. And the girl was indignant. She said that he was just a beggar, after which, she went to his window, and shouted that she forgives him, and therefore he should quickly descend down. He calmly looked at her, and asked why she was yelling like that. Because he is here and his name is Yeitian. The rest of the guys from the company began to say that they don't need Tian because they have already been invited to the villa, and then one of them added that only powerful, wealthy people. After that, the purple-eyed guy narrowed his eyes. He finally realized that the main character is dressed as a beggar and they won't let him into the villa. He asked if he understood the fact. Ye Tian replied that he did not care, because in his head he remembers how this man beat him, even though it was 600 years old. Then the girl pointed her finger at him, and said that he obliged there. She told him to dress decently and stopped showing off, because he dishonors her. At that moment, the purple-eyed boy smirked, and then cryptically said that it was. The main character hesitated. He did not understand what was happening. That guy with purple eyes has a very influential bloodline roots. After that, the man standing below said that he had trunk. There is a set of secular clothes that does not liked his cousin. But in response to this, The protagonist waved his hand and said that, not worth the sacrifice. Besides, they are already too late. So there is no time for that. The main character with a satisfied face puts on a jacket. He thinks that if he is not mistaken, then what will happen on Villa Tengol? Some time later, they all reached the mountain Tengol. There they were met by a man at security. One of the guys whispered that this man works for the Golden Titan. The main character got out of the car. He reflects on that the aura of the earth has completely dried up, but nevertheless, the energy of this place will allow him to cultivate faster. Then, Ye Tian was called from somewhere on the side. The purple-eyed guy started imagining the main character of the security guard. He said that this son is very respected person. But the guard was adamant. He said that the status of this a person still leaves much to be desired. So they leave. The girl was incredibly angry. She knew what to take him. It's a bad idea, and now he's a complete disgrace. After that, she ran after Shangrong, shouting at them back for them to wait, because they are going to fast. The guy with purple eyes took out a piece of paper. He said that this is a ticket, without it she will not be able to go there. Then he looked at the main character and said that a little miscalculated, forgot about it. Then he offered him wait at the hotel, but Ye Tuan refused. He said the guy can't trouble himself and wished them good fun, and he this time will also find something to do. He explained that he would rather die than take something from his hands. Shenrong. And now he has to start collecting energy for cultivation, he continued, and said that on Earth now there is hardly a perceptible aura. And then he swore that no one else in this world would wipe his feet on him. Then he found some kind of Japanese-style pavilion. The place turned out to be quite quiet and peaceful, and should him to approach. Then he sat down in a meditation posture and began concentrate. The main character said that after all, it was not in vain that he had been 600 years cultivator. Now he decided to start with the basics. There are only 8 kingdoms, namely the erection, foundation, creation of the core, birth of the soul, exile of the soul. The main character explained that in a past life he was almost managed to gain immortality, but unfortunately all of his kingdoms turned out to be vicious. While the main character was meditating, in the air around him, filaments of blue energy floated. Then, it happened that the main character died, and thus, the demon that destroyed the heart of the Tao inside it disappeared, and opened the main character with new meridians. After that, the protagonist explained that the erection foundation consists of only 3 stages, namely, flexible, bright and perfect. The main character spent a lot of time training. Already, it started to get dark. Then he asks himself what to cultivate for half a day. To install the base should be enough. Then he said that right now he himself feels like everyone else. Unnecessary particles leave his body. Then he turned to the side and said he was going check the result. He went to the stone behind him and began concentrate energy in the fist. Then he swung with all his strength and hit the stone. To his deepest surprise, a dent was left on the stone, which exactly repeated the shape of his hand. The main character is disappointing. He should hit like this. Was to split the stone because it didn't happen. It just means to keep going. Improve. Then he sat down and thought, he needs to find a place with much more aura concentration, and it would also be good. Master a method that would give a quick result. Then something clicked in his head. He felt an incredibly strong aura around him. He turned around abruptly, asking himself how on earth, where all the aura had almost disappeared, there might still be cultivators left. And, finally turning around, he saw a girl with a couple people, from which this aura emanated. Then he looked at the whole picture more carefully, and realized that it was not an aura. Ye Tuan said that if the person with such an aura he will begin to cultivate, he will enter into some kingdom, but it will be unclean. The protagonist remembered that on earth the energy of cold is not more than boasting. but for some it is completely disease. One of the girl's bodyguards said that the guy took her territory and asked her if he should drive him away. On his surprise, the girl replied that this guy did not enemy. One of the thugs said he figured it out too, and then added that they should find out more about him, and he will now take care of it. Three guys approached the main character, and the main one ordered him to be. To this the protagonist only opened one eye, and asked what he wanted. He asked a very unexpected question. He asked Ye Tuan, does he know any martial arts, and if so, does he not? Whether he wants to compete in sparring. From such news, the main character fell out a little. The main character stood up a little and said that he really knows a little about some combat arts. But at that moment, he almost laughed to himself. One of the trio asked Yu Shen why he challenged someone to a duel, because last time he broke his opponent's spine. The second guy said that Yu Shan studied the diaper, Chinese kickboxing and freestyle wrestling. The girl who just came up said it was regular duel, opponents should just exchange experience and most importantly do not overdo it. The thug told the girl that he wasn't going it hard beat and she just needs to watch him win. They both become in the rack, and at this moment thinks about that, in a past life, he very often liked to tease experienced cultivators and bring them to battle. Then a blow sounded, just one attack, and the opponent of the main hero flew into the air. Everyone else was in complete shock. And Yu Shen just fell to the ground, almost without consciousness. The girl standing nearby was also in shock. She could not to believe that he defeated Yu Shen with one blow. In that moment she realized that he was just an incredible person. Yu Shan barely stood up, then immediately realized that he just ate in front of his love. Then, all of a sudden, from his nose a fountain poured blood. The rest of the guys immediately ran to help him, and asked, do I need to call an ambulance? But the opponent of the protagonist still does not want to give up, he trying with all his might to get up. The protagonist, seeing this, was also at a loss. The opponent has not yet accepted defeat. Then the main character clenched his fist, and said to himself, that it wouldn't do that way, he needs to win. And then something strange happened. The main character, as if hung in the air, and began to deplete blue energy in all directions. None of those present could understand what happening. So all they had to do was watch it, and scream. Energy got so strong physical embodiment, it is that the leaves around soared into the air. And after that, apparently not expecting this from himself, the hero abruptly calmed it all down. The protagonist realized that he had just moved into the middle key cultivation level. But because of him, inattention and lack of control occurred. Energy leak. The people standing around just couldn't believe their point to the eyes. None of them understood what had just it happened. Then, Yu Shen realized that they had a completely different level strength. And he was afraid, because until recently he wanted settle accounts with this guy. After that, everyone bowed to him and began to ask for forgiveness, calling him master. The girl immediately said that it seemed that strength woke up in him, Shaoxian, and therefore he has every right to be called master. The main character did not expect such a thing a bit, because it means there are still cultivators on the ground. Then he asked the girl what it all meant. The girl immediately replied that this is strength, this is the peak perfection, the highest level of human opportunities. She never saw the owners in her life. The protagonist crossed his arms and thought, throughout. Apparently, the holders of such power still exist, but they are very rare. At this moment, the girl thinks about what is in those in whom the whole force was born always became cruel and domineering. After that, the main character drew attention to the fact that all the people around him tremble with fear. After a long pause, he gave out what he just needed. It was all to think over. Digesting such a volume of information, everyone standing in front exhaled, as if a mountain had been lifted from their shoulders. Then, the girl said what would the main character accept from them. A gift as a final apology. Ye Tian had a silver card in his hands. He asked again. What it is? The girl explained that he had in his hands. Plastic VIP. Pass to the party. And then she added that no one was holding him in their hands, and there was no extra word. Say. The protagonist smiled and again looked at the silver card. After these events, he immediately became interested. Look in the face of Shen Rong with such a VIP pass. Then he looked at the girl and asked if her name was Hong Linger. The girl confirmed this information and then asked what he needed. He informed her that her aura was actually cold poison. The girl could not expect this in any way, and therefore I looked at the main character in anticipation. Then one of her acquaintances, standing behind. I asked her about what this guy says. He said it could be something to do with her cold aura. The girl raised her head and said that the main character. It was enough just to look at her once, and then he immediately learned the cause of her illness. The main character took more air into his lungs. Looking forward to this awesome moment, he raised his hand forward, directing it towards the girl. And after that, he will lose that his name is Yuetian. Then he looked into her eyes and said that the thing is that his grandfather once walked with the same ailment caused cold poison. Tears began to well up in her eyes. She asked if there was a way to cure such ailment. She said the cold poison was taken out of her mother, and the doctor said that the girls were not destined to live and 20 years. He asked her not to worry and said that if he could to identify the cause of the disease, it is likely to be able to eradicate it. Then, the girl addressed me as a master, said that if the protagonist really can cure her of this illness, then she is ready to do for him whatever he wants. Then Yu Shen reached out to the girl with his hand and asked, is she ready to do even that? She screamed for. He did not think of such things. During his 600-year life, he saw many goddesses and fairies, and then he refused them all. And natural charmlier can't seduce him. After that, he said that he had to help her. Then, without having time to turn into a girl, she noticed a leaf, which flew right into her hand. What was the surprise that on this sheet out of nowhere appeared the phone number of the main character. And he, in turn, turned around and went home, shouting one last thing for her to call him in a week. After he left, the girl immediately asked Yu Shan, does he know anything about his classmates? He began to remember all the people gathered at the villa Tengol, and yet remembered that there was a Shenrong. He couldn't to think that such information might help her. The girl immediately opened her phone and started looking for there is some contact. Then she dialed the number, and when someone picked up the phone, she told people to tell the chef to prepared the most delicious and luxurious table for the school rental for today. And at that moment, the main character just grumbled a lot. Stomach. He grabbed it and realized how hungry he was. Especially if you remember that he had not eaten anything since morning. And then, right into his nasal receptors, the smell hit. Banquet. He already managed to forget what hunger is, how unpleasant it is. Feeling, but this chic smell so strongly attracts him. At the villa, when he presented his VIP card, he immediately missed. A guard standing nearby asked a little later what such a redneck makes a plastic VIP card. The main character is already shaking. He likes these envious, mysterious looks, but he understands that he should not immediately get into trouble. Then he turned his attention to what was near Zihan. There is an empty seat, and he needs to sit there. The girls, when they saw the main character, did not believe their eyes. Zihan said she let the main character sit next to her. Otherwise, he will again begin to wander back and forth. In addition, his mom still asked me to take care of him. Then, the second girl with blue hair unceremoniously turned to the main character. She told Ye Tian, persuaded his parents to break the marriage contract signed in their childhood. The guys immediately pissed off, and he banged his chopsticks for sushi on the table. He confidently said that he would never chase Zihan. And secondly, the agreement that they signed. Parents are a total waste. Then the girl asked Zihan what was wrong if he says that the engagement can be easily terminated. The protagonist eats and pretends not to hear their conversation, although it greatly infuriates him himself. Then, near the entrance to the frozen some noise, and the main character drew attention to him immediately. Purple-eyed guy meets his older brother, who turned out to be Yushan. In the past, the protagonist's opponent stands and looks around, while saying that he is only here for one person. And after that, Yushan abruptly turned around, and shouted at his little brother to shut up. This is because he is here for in order to find Master Tanya. At the same moment, the main characters were quietly sitting in several tens of meters, listened to this conversation, and continued to taste his soup. Purple-haired guy asks nervously, who exactly is his brother looking for? He replies that he is looking for mastery, but first he wants to drink to his health. After this phrase, conversations pour down in the crowd. People, they ask each other who is this master, and why they are all not yet familiar with him. The protagonist then leaned back in his chair, and waved to Yushan hand, saying that he was not shy, and approached. Then one of the guys started yelling Ye Tang, then how dare he talking to brother you like that, and he just said goodbye with life. Then, suddenly, he received a slap in the face from Yushan. After what older brother said how dare he so talk to the great mastery. When people saw this, they were simply dumbfounded, and they opened their mouths. After that, Ranglo noticed security entering the room. Yushan walked up to the main character, and happily said that he finally found it. Hearing this, the guy suggested him to sit down. Then, the attention of the protagonist was attracted by security. They calmly, one by one, lined up in a row for something. And then they shouted in one voice the phrase that mastery, the most best. Yushan raised his glass, and asked the main character, let's whether he drink to his health, as a sign of the deepest respect. He naturally did not refuse, and they both drank a glass. Then, the former adversary folded his hands, and said that the hero taught him a good lesson today, and he still hopes meet with him. And now he bowed, and is going leave. The girl of the protagonist was left simply without words. She was silent, looked after the departed Yushan. Then her friend asked why she hadn't. She said that Ye Tuan is so respected by everyone. After that, the girl in confusion asked the chief hero what kind of relationship they have with brother Reno. He, having drunk one more glass beforehand, replied that can't say anything since they've known each other for less than a day. After these events, one of the guys standing near Reno said that some kind of accident had happened to him, and then he added that randomness will divorce them in the end. Heard this guy with purple hair only smiled maliciously. He thought for a moment what to do with this Ye Tian. After, he noted that although Yushan is good, he is only a student like them, and on the side of Reno where more powerful people. Then he fumed a bit and started telling everyone that nothing interesting and important happened here, and in general, everything is in order. After that, he turned to the person who was given slapped her face, and told him to do something with her immediately. Made and hid her, as he dishonors her. And the guys had nothing left to do but turn around and leave, something muttering under his breath. Seeing all this, the main character only grinned sinisterly and said that Tengol would remember this moment for a long time, and now the show will start. Tengol walked calmly down one of the many corridors. Villas. After walking a few more meters, he met some incredibly beautiful girl, and very happy. Then, he said to himself that even though today is not his day, he got a slap in the face, but was able to meet such stunning girl. He took a closer look, and clouded by feelings, he thought that she is some kind of simpleton and he will immediately approach her. He came over and gave her a little hug, and then asked if she wanted to have some fun tonight. Then, while the bang rang out, the girl hit Tengul already on the second cheek, and then told him not to dare to open his dirty hands. After these events, anger surged over the guy. And in a fit of rage, he kicked the girl to the floor. He stood over her and screamed. He said if she was like that cool, then let him try to hit him again. And if she doesn't, he knows who he is, even if he does not dare to climb with an apology. In the deserted corridors of the village there is no one else around. And therefore, no one saw what he had done, and the guy just threw her on the ground and left. Waiting for the right moment, the girl got phone and began to convulsively dial a number. And then she called and told her father that some asshole beat her up and right now, he owes everything. Answer. He went back and started complaining about the injustice. This world, he told. At first she appeared to him cute, and then slapped him another slap in the face, and I had to give her a double. Rango replied to this that they have nothing to fear, because they are on villa. And no one is on their side, so, in fact, they are under roof. Rango said that only an idiot would venture into them, even Don, who owns all the entertainment centers in city, does not have enough influence for this. The main character is quite listening to their laughter. I understand that. They won't have to laugh anymore, because now something will happen. And indeed, in a moment the front door was kicked off the leg. There immediately collapsed some, obviously, muddy types. One of which was for a cigarette, and the other with a baseball bat. Rango, in turn, immediately jumped up and began explain that this is a private party, and without a pass they will not have the right to enter. Then the head thug went up to one of the guys and told that sucker to leave quickly if understands in an amicable way and does not want problems. The sportsman who came began to drag the guy somewhere inside, and he tried to resist and call for help. Rango, the purple-eyed guy, started swinging the law. He said that they first went inside without permission, and then they began to take away his innocent friend. The guy whom they tried to take away was immediately delighted. He demanded that the people who entered take their hands off him. Otherwise they will be very sorry. Then he got another slap in the face. This time he did not lose consciousness. And the guy who hit him said that he may not believe it, but he will finish him off now. Rango begins to panic. He silently begs them stay. But he hesitated. He understands that he should not interfere. Otherwise he may lose his prestige. Problems. But then, his remaining friends expressed their willingness intervene in a fight with these thugs to get paid heat for your arrogance. No sooner Rango and turn around, as a scuffle ensued. And in a few seconds, the high school students were already standing over beaten men. The girl of the protagonist was impressed. I was shocked how quickly they put them all down. And the main character asked if she was sure that they put everyone down. Then he said that they were just sixes. In response to this, a girl with blue hair told him that he didn't lift a finger. After that, the leader of the gang that came took out the phone and began to convulsively call someone, while saying that they pay him for what they did. Rango did not do anything. He said that I wonder who this type is calling for help, and what they are all made of. Stuck together. He dialed a number and then spoke into the receiver a phrase addressed to Mr. Don, and said that they were now on Ville Tengul. Then he said that the nerd who beat his daughter right here. But at that moment Rango couldn't believe his ears. If it's true or Don, they have big problems. He wondered if it was possible that this blonde, the fool standing behind him, beat the daughter of Mr. Don. After a while, the door to the villa slammed open. Inside, with slow steps, several everyone who was in the hall at that moment immediately bowed, because Mr. Don came in. Then the Mr. himself looked around the whole room and asked which of those present had touched his daughter. But all of them. Courage somewhere abruptly disappeared. and no one uttered a word. Rango diluted the tense silence. He said that it was completely respect to Mr. Don, but there was some mistake, eh? He also said that his father is a very important person in this city. But the man just grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and then asked, how dare he touch his daughter, because this is the most valuable what he has, and then added that the guy will not leave this villa for two. The guy continued to try to crush the man with authority. He said that Mr. Manhwa organized this party, and if a man respects him, then he should let the guy go. Hearing this, the Don said that the man in front of him tries to crush him with authority, talking about his connections and the importance of his father. Then he exhaled loudly and slowly. Then he shouted that right now he was ready to open the guy eyes, and he once again explained that everything in this city, including Manhwa, and his father is absolutely nothing compared with him. The guy was in complete shock. He didn't know what to say. No longer knew what to do. The moment the girl asked how much to be stupid to touch the daughter of such an influential person, and then she was also frightened, because it means that they can all punish. But the main character was calm. He said that he promised mother to the girl to take care of her, and therefore now she is no one won't touch. The girl was again a little confused, but this time she did not make yourself a queen. Then the main character noticed that apparently, this time, Rango real, very big problems, but he won't move and a finger until it touches Zihan. Why did the bandits who came inside start about something? Whispered to each other. Dun then asked if these guys thought they were cool. But now every man in this room say hello, and all the girls will go to pay for the sins in their monastery. Then the bandits started beating everyone in the room, but then one of them decided to approach the girl of the protagonist. She started screaming in fear and begging to be given get out of here because she has nothing to do with these people. But then, unexpectedly, between the girl and the thug in the ground, stuck to sushi sticks, the bandits just went crazy, to wooden sticks, literally built into the ground, breaking through the carpet and floor, and also started a few cracks. And then the main character got up from his seat. He said that didn't really want to get involved, but these guys forced him. The main characters stood in front of the Don himself and several of his assistants. On the face they say there was no doubt. He asked the guy who he is making out of himself. But at this time it slightly subordinate got nervous. He covered his mouth with his hand and, as if mocking the guy and joked how scared he was. The protagonist's girl, with hope as well as tears for eyes, looked at the boy. At that moment, her friend asked herself if Don frightened Tian. The mister then shook his hands and rhetorically asked himself, why is there so much ignorance in this place? Then he looked back a little and said to one of his subordinates to teach the guy a good lesson. He hit his fist with his palm and said that he was happy to he would do, and in general he was afraid that his commander was already talking about it. Won't ask. Don grinningly explained that Sanzi was an elite commando in the past, and alone he can defeat more than a dozen soldiers. And the thug said that he is his death. The protagonist looked at his opponent and appreciated that he has great brute strength as well as a strong body, therefore he is the perfect target to test his abilities. After that, the thug suddenly threw his arm back and tried to hit the guy. And he, in turn, just stood there as if nothing had happened. Then, in a second, he raised his hand and grabbed the fist of Senzi. By stopping him, the man was in complete shock. It's practically contrary to all the laws of physics, how such a small the man was able to stop his blow. After these events, the subordinate put one hand in his pocket and at the same time said that the guy is still not bad. Well, it's only for the better, because it's always more pleasant to win. Masters. Then a thug pulled a big one out of his pocket. Sharp knife. The guy once again looked at the man and said that once he immediately resorted to the use of edged weapons. So he overestimated it. To all this, the guy just grinned and asked, "Really? He thinks that his toothpick can harm the kid?" But the thud was already furious. He immediately struck edged weapons, while shouting that the dead are talking to nothing. He invested in this blow all his skills, speed and strength to end the guy with one stroke. But he only focused his gaze on the cold weapons and stood motionless. At the moment of impact, the girl turned away and tried to close eyes not to see it. Don's face was pleased. He stood and looked forward to the spray blood flying from Ye Tian's body and rang low with his guys, who said the guy was just overconfident, but still, deep down, he hoped that the main character would dodge. But, to the surprise of all onlookers, something happened. Incredible. A second before the cut, the knife was flying in air to the other side. Don turned to his best warrior, asking how that, and at the same time absolutely not understanding what is happening. How could such a skinny guy do it with one punch? A man leaning on all four limbs is trying stand up, blood flows from his nose and mouth, but at the same time, he trying to reassure everyone that he's okay. And the main character at that moment just calmly looked on your right hand. Then, Mr. Don screamed. He pointed his finger at the guy and ordered all his subordinates to attack and kill him right now. At that very moment, the whole crowd with a huge roar ran to one guy. All this only amused the main character. He noted that it is low to attack one schoolboy all at once, but he nevertheless thanked them, because it will save a lot of it time. One of the bandits standing in the crowd in pain yells loudly that there's something wrong with his arm, and he just tried to hit guy. Ye Tuan tells them with a rather smirk that it's all about true purpose. Because of it, his skin is now stronger than steel. Mr. Don is already seriously worried. He does not understand what's wrong with this guy. The next second, the guy hit a few more bandits, and those, in turn, could only see him. A silhouette flickering before them. Mr. viciously presses some mug. He says that this scoundrel, today he must definitely understand that he, whether Dong, definitely not the one to challenge. The next second, this mug falls to the floor and shatters, spilling contents on the floor. After that, Don, pointing his finger at the broken cup, tells the main character that if he wants to fight here, then they will fight, and he will tear it into 1,000 pieces. The main character was a little infuriated, and he asked himself that they will now see who will tear whom. They were already standing opposite each other, ready to fight in furious fight. But suddenly their skirmish was interrupted by a voice. Some girl asked who dared to start a fight on her villa. The same Lin entered the room with her guards. Seeing her, Mr. Don was seriously scared. Apparently even he is not the top of the hierarchy in this city. She asked Mr. what he was doing here now. After all this time, I was expecting him. To this, Don replies that I was about to go to her, but this guy delayed him. Then he turns around to the main character and tells him that now he's definitely dead. And the guy with a stupid expression, noticing Linger, asked what she was doing here. The girl approached him and said that it was her who beat her, and she came to personally greet Ye Tian, and then more, and offered him a drink, and said that in her presence, no one will touch him with a finger. They clinked glasses. And Mr. Don, almost the roof is not went. He ceased to understand anything at all, and in features what kind of guy is this, and why is Linner so cute with him? Have a drink in a glass. The main character asked where she came from. Does Donna know? The girl replied that they were just relatives, but at the same time, her parents are much more influential than his. No. After that, Li Dong began to bow and ask for forgiveness from girls, saying what if he knew what the main character, her guest, he would admit an aggressive address. Well, they just ridiculously looked at him. Then, he fell to his knees and started yelling that mastery. Tian forgave him. The protagonist thought it was good that no one died. so he can end on that note. Then he said that he forgives the Dawn. And then, the girl yelled at her brother to get out from here. And in the end, all the bandits who came here began to dump. The girl again began to ask the protagonist for an apology, and says that she is ready to pay for everything. The main character interrupted her, and said that everything was in order, but there are too many ears in this place, so they need to go to another place. The girl blushed and agreed. Then, she turned around and they both said goodbye. If this main character said that Zihan is alive, that's why. His mission accomplished. And his girlfriend at that moment thought that the main character shamed her all his life, but now something has changed in him. The main characters were standing in the parking lot, where there were many expensive cars. The girl once again asked the main character who is Lin and why she helped. He said that they met yesterday, and she apparently, I just decided to return the favor. The girl got angry. She lives with the main character together the first day and something is clearly wrong here. She told him to split immediately, but in answer he just laughed sarcastically. And then he asked if she thought he couldn't just help anyone. Then, he slammed the car door, and said that from now on he all clear. After that, he said that now they are nobody for each other. And let her continue to wither on some pieces of paper. She only managed to connect his back, that he ungrateful boy. The protagonist reflects that the cultivation process flows too slowly and key in his own body. Not enough. After that, his stomach growled. For all this time he never learned to feed on external energy. He hadn't been this hungry in a very long time. And he only had a small change in his pocket. He still decided to buy food, otherwise he would have become the first a starving cultivator. He thinks over whom he still has to keep his promise and he'll that girl, and he has money, now, like, enough for medicine. Then he went to the store and still bought something. At the moment when he was returning home along his alley, attention drew voices coming from the side. In an alley, 3 men cornered some attractive girl. After that, she decided to slap one of them. But then, she was immediately grabbed by the throat. The man began to choke her, while saying that generally he likes girls with character. The girl was ready to faint from suffocation. But then, as the protagonist's voice echoed down the alley, he yelled at them to stop. He said he didn't want to get his hands dirty on them. But if they don't stop now, they'll have to pay for it. One of the types left the girl, and told the guy failed, because it's none of his business. All the bandits took out their knives, and began to aggress to the side. Main character. The girl, barely able to croak to the main character, too. He fled, because he alone could not cope. Then, they screamed at the guy. And in a second, each of them was in the air, and the protagonist has already calmly passed between them. After they hit, all the bandits unanimously decided, get the hell out of this place. The guy walked up to the girl, and held out his hand to her. He told her that now everything is fine, and she is in security, only now, she should not walk the night in one more. She thanked the main character, and said that she understood everything. Then he helped her up. Then, the protagonist looked at without thinking, as if they already met somewhere, but because of the layer of cosmetics, he could not understand exactly where. She then told the protagonist that he could leave her number and then she would somehow thank him. The main characters replied that he was not worth it. He said that he, an ordinary student, but of course it would be nice if she could help him with his part-time job. Then she replied that in the bar where she works, as if the assistant bartender is missing a comma and he is not far from here. The proposal for the protagonist was just perfect, but he needed time to cultivate and so he asked something about term papers. The girl told him that all you need is just a couple hours to stand at the bar, and it does not hurt his studies. He thanked her and said that the offer was very good, but he needs to think more. Then after a short pause, he asked her name. She said that her name is Li Shu. If the guy suddenly something decides, then let him come to her. He said his name is Ye, and he will always remember her kindness. After the meeting, the main character returned to his home. He sat and practiced his magic inside a removable rooms. The protagonist said that with the help of miraculous pills full of ki will begin to interact with cold poison, and this should cure the girl. With his magic, he created a small ball with healing properties, and then explained that ordinary herbs would not enough. He will still need to add higher herbs, and then he can be sure that the pill will work exactly. The process of preparing medicines for the protagonist is smoothly, but there is one problem. He is haunted by his empty wallet. After that, he took out some sheet from the school, and this. For a moment, it was as if his memory had returned. Li Zhu always was the first beauty of the school, and he somehow forgot about it. He took himself with one hand to his beard because of thought. It turns out that a school celebrity works at a bar at night, and working hard at school during the day. It can be said that they are like two sides of the same coin. Think about it, the main character decided that after all, worth a visit to this bar. Why did he collapse onto his bed, and think about the fact that much in his new life now sparkled with new colors, and becomes much more interesting. The main thing is that the hero looks at the sign of his new place. Work. He remarked that after all, Li Shu was only a student, but already owns this place. After that, he goes inside with thoughts that he doesn't need to betray your identity. When the girl noticed him, she immediately called him to her. She asked again if the guy thought up, because they still have. There is a terrible shortage of staff. He took his head and said that perhaps he agreed, and let her now tell him what is required of him. She was delighted and asked the guy to follow her. He said that now he will show everything. After a few moments, the main character was already standing with tray and dressed as a waiter, while holding a few glasses of wine. Then his attention was drawn to a conversation between two guys around the corner. They didn't talk about Li Shui being in big trouble. After all, they say that she crossed the road to Don himself. And in cruelty he has no equal. Take in the main character guy said to be a rookie. Failed and quickly got to work. He obediently complied with their demand. He walked further down the hall, and at the same time, asked himself how it so the Imperial Bar has a problem with Li Dong. After a while, the girl came to the guy with the envelope in which was his first salary. She said she finally found someone she could rely. But the main character said that it's not worth it. Praise him strongly. He took the envelope and they parted, saying goodbye to tomorrow. As he walked home, thoughts began to boil in his head. He felt that there is something strange going on inside him. But there was a big problem. After a few seconds, the main character felt that it was terribly not grab aura. Suddenly, the guy folded his arms and spoke in Arabic. And at that moment, for some reason, it started leak out through the window. The protagonist was shocked. He asked himself what this miraculous technique was, and how he managed to collect the smallest grains of aura around you. Well, it turned out that the main character absorbed power from the very Luna, even she succumbed to him. He gathered himself of his own accord, and then slowly lowered himself onto ground until I could stand up. Then he looked at his hands, and said that now the power just fills it up. But he was distracted from his studies by a phone call. He looked at his mobile, and saw that he, for some reason, whether the on calls. When he picked up the phone, he heard an unexpected phrase from there. Li Dong addressed the main character as Master Ye, and asked him for help. The protagonist asks if the Don why he asks for his help if their last meeting took place. Not very smooth. The interlocutor informs him that he has problems with Linger, and therefore, only Master Yi can solve them, and then he added that he would pay. The protagonist knew that this snake's money was for him. Now it doesn't matter what, but he asks very pitifully, and this is very strange. But the main character agreed. And after a while he nailed instead, where he was met by a dozen guards. As he got out of the car and approached the entrance, each of the composed guards bowed and called him master. Then Lydon himself came out and also named the main character master, and also added that he was very glad to see him. He led the main character into a room where on a large sofa a man was sitting and drinking tea. The main character once again asked Lydon what it was all about. Case. He pointed his finger at the seated man and introduced him. Master Ying Zhongyu. The protagonist greeted the person and then thought that a cultivator at this time is very rare. A seated man opened a small lid on a cup and drank some of the drink. And then Mr. Dunn told the main character what they needed. Move away.